into the Sunshine Cathedral as we come together for the memorial service for Rachel Navarro. And as we gather this evening, I want to offer these words of welcome and encouragement as we begin this unique service in music and in celebration of life for one who has been taken from us. And I want to open this service with a reading from the Roman philosopher Seneca, who wrote, "In the presence of death, we must continue to sing the song of life. We must be able to accept death and go from its presence, better able to bear our burdens and to lighten the load of others. Out of sorrows should come understanding. Through our sorrows, we join with all those before us who have had to suffer, and all those who were yet to do so. Let us not be gripped by the fear of death. If another day be added to our lives, let us joyfully receive it. But let us not anxiously depend on tomorrow. Though we grieve the death of our loved ones, we accept them and hold on to our memories as precious gifts. Let us make the best of our loved ones while they're with us, and let us not bury our love with death." Would you join me in prayer? Holy One, as we gather this evening, we are thankful for the joy of the life of the one that we celebrate this day. And as we enter into this time of worship, may Rachel's spirit and presence be alive with us through words, through song, and through music. For it is in your many names that we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I've been writing and talking out loud and thinking, what do I want to say about Rachel? I think everybody here, or most of the people here, either knew my mother or met her at some point. And we can all agree, she was quite a woman, she was quite unique, she had her way. And even looking around today at the setup on stage, there are bongos and congas and drums. And Jimmy, my dad, was a drummer. And my mother loved Latin music. So it's all coming into place here. Rachel was of two ethnicities, Filipino and Puerto Rican. She always thought of herself as different, and she would impart this sentiment to us as we were growing up. So somehow we were led to believe we weren't the typical American family, whatever that is. Like my brother jokes around the Norman Rockwell painting, but we were watching all movies the last few days, and we were very much like a typical American family in a good way, you know, loving parents and children, and gathering around the Christmas tree, opening presents, and Dad there with the camera, and you know, it was just wonderful. There's one little ethnic twist. In one video, my grandmother, my Puerto Rican grandmother, is dancing. It's perfect. She's in the background. It's like, what is she doing? But she's just dancing to keep it. There's no sound on these films. I just wish I knew what piece was playing. It's easy to look back with rose-colored glasses, and admittedly, we did have our struggles as people, as a family. You know, the dynamics between my parents was not smooth, and yet they had an attraction for each other. They were meant to be together. They were actually married, divorced, and remarried until my dad's passing in 2000. And then they lived in separate residences the second time around, which I think was a smart move. They go their separate ways, and Dad had his way of living, and she had her way. What I wanted to say, though, the optimism that I see in these videos, it's a testament to our will to seek the positive, to look beyond the issues and the problems. And I'm really grateful, James, thank you. He took time off work to go to the video store in New Jersey. They opened at 9, he has to be at work. He took about 15 8mm films and they put it on DVD. About my mother, growing up, she was the youngest of the first 4 children. My grandmother and my grandfather had 7 children altogether. She was the first one born in the United States. The reason I say the youngest of the first 4, there was a large gap several years before my Uncle Robert, here you are, came into the world. And by the way, my Uncle Robert is the only sibling who is here today. Her other siblings are in other places, and they're all here in spirit, and they're alive. My mother grew up in Spanish Harlem, or close to it, Lexington and 108. She loved going to the movies with her best friend, Frances. She attended Washington Irving High School, which I believe was an academically oriented school. They had trade schools. My dad went to Textile High. His mother worked in the garment district, my grandmother. So Mom was, I believe she was on the college track, but maybe because of money, she didn't go to college until later. And while in high school, she took Latin. You know, she used to say, it's a dead language, but she'd go to Catholic Mass and she'd know what the priests were saying. So she loved language and she loved crossword puzzles. Really, she just loved it. New York Times, she and my sister would fight over it. As a young adult, after high school, I don't know of too many jobs that she had, although I'm sure she worked. She did mention at one time working in a photography studio doing portrait touch-up work. And I didn't know that until many years later, so I was like, oh really, you did that? I didn't know. She met my dad while watching him perform in some Latin review, possibly at the Palladium in New York, and the story we heard as children. She was looking through her binoculars and she says, I want to meet that man. Rachel had a way of getting what she wanted. So it took a little while. My dad was a hard catch because he was hot. There were a lot of women that liked him, but Dad was also a very earthy, grounded person, very dedicated to family. So he was a perfect, I think they were a perfect couple. I'm going to say that. Publicly and to everybody. They married in January 1955. January, in New York, in the dead of winter. She's not a June bride. So again, she's different. They spent their honeymoon at Mount Airy Lodge in the Poconos. She talked about the slippery ice and the roads and how dangerous it was. She was a character. In the late 50s, they moved to Miramar, had a quiet neighborhood, and they lived with all these retirees. So as a little girl growing up, all the neighbors were like grandparent figures. So I learned to read at the age of 3 from this woman I used to call Nana. It was, I can't remember her name, Leonard and a called her Nana Schneider. God bless them. They were probably in their 70s or 80s at the time. Then we later moved to a bigger house in Hollywood when my sister came along. Rebecca came along in 1959, Julie came along in 1960. I'm giving away our ages for those of you who are younger. I'm no child. My mom missed her family, and it was kind of hard for my dad because he was the one that had to do all the moving and stuff, but we moved back to New York for a few years. I'm glad we did that. I know for him it was hard. And I acknowledge it. It was a time to be with all of our cousins and aunts and uncles, and we had all this wonderful, we had these wonderful parties. And I'm just going to fast forward. I could talk here, I could do a seminar on Rachel. Really, she's so interesting. As long as you all aren't bored and going, oh God, when's she going to finish? I'll keep talking. I wrote like 3 pages, I'm not going to do all of it. I want to talk about my mom's humanity and sensitivity. I remember coming home from school in November 1963, and there she is weeping. And I said, what's wrong? She says, Kennedy was shot, the president was shot. And like the nation, we went into mourning. It was awful. I remember the next 3-4 days, she couldn't stop crying. I mean, it was bad. It was really hard on her. And then another time, there was a Vietnam soldier, some guy jumped on a grenade to save his platoon. She wept for a couple of days. I mean, there was something about her that had a really tender heart. And I remember those things. And a little boy was lost one time. We were shopping in Brooklyn, and his child was crying, and he lost his mother, and she found an adult, I guess somebody to take care of him. She took the time to do that. Fast forwarding to moving back to Florida in the late 60s. We bought a house in Driftwood Acres, or they bought a house, for a ridiculously low price of actually it was $11,500. Where do you buy a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house with a pool on the corner in Hollywood? At the time, comparable homes went for about 20, 22 grand. But you have to think of the ratio. So for them, it was a steal. And Dad was a drummer, Mom was a secretary. Hello, this is not big money. They raised us. We never lacked anything. We had clothes, we had food, we had a life. We didn't go out to restaurants much, but we needed to. We just had a great time. Growing up in the Navarra household was never a dull moment. I shared this with a couple of friends. Saturday mornings we'd wanted to sleep in after a week at school. About 9:30, 10 o'clock. Meanwhile, Dad's asleep in the master bedroom with earplugs. He can sleep through a war. He's out. He gets home 2 in the morning. We're trying to sleep. She's playing Lou Bell D, Madame Butterfly, Man of La Mancha Overture, screaming brass, and what the heck, Tito Puente. We're like, Mom, we're trying to sleep. And she's trying to get up. And she treated us to her specialty breakfast of Aunt Jemima buckwheat pancakes, which admittedly they're good for us nutritionally, but it's flavorful. We wanted buttermilk. Mom, please mix it with Hungry Jack. Now it's garbage. I'm like, okay. So thank you, Mom. We grew up strong. So buckwheat pancakes, yes. Rachel had an eye for detail like no other. Nothing escaped her scrutiny. People on TV, a thread hanging from your sleeve, a hair out of place. If I was going out and she thought it was cold, and she thought it was cold, you're making me cold, put on a sweater. Or she'd touch my arm, see, you're cold. I'm like, I know, but as an older woman now, I was always warm, so the antithesis, she was always cold, and I would stick my head in the freezer when I used to visit her, so women of this age appreciate that. Rachel spent a lot of time on herself. Yes, she was blessed with essentially good looks, however, she felt the need to really tweak it, as you see by these photographs. She was always well put together. She also had strong ideas about how others should look, and there are a couple of stories, I'll just tell one quick one. She meant well. She was trying to say, you look really nice today, but she says, oh, you look really good today, are you wearing makeup? Just some woman, I'm like, oh my God, please. Just because she spoke her mind. I don't think she meant anything negative or cruel. And here's another funny one. I remember watching The Wizard of Oz as a little kid. Every year we watch it. And I'd say, Mommy, what is Judy Garland doing today? What does she look like? This is what she says. She's 40 and she's fat. Just blew my whole image. And here's this gorgeous fact that she was an older woman at that point. So, anyway, I could keep talking here. I will say the sense of humor, despite the struggles, maybe because of that, we had humor, constantly looking for laughs, watching Ed Sullivan, watching Carol Burnett. I didn't go out much as a teenager on Saturday nights. I was really a late bloomer in a lot of ways, and I just prefer to be home with Mom. And I'll never, regret that. We used to watch everything Maritime War, Rhoda, Maud, all those good Norman Lear shows, but Carol Burnett was the best. We just roared with laughter, and now I see them on reruns. And my father had quite the gift for gab. He would regale us the stories of being in the Army band, and what a home. And the music. I have a friend who wonders why I don't listen to music much, and I said, it's all in my head. As a toddler, they said I was dancing in front of the stereo, Tito Puente, Machito, all these bands. I had it all in my head. I didn't need to hear it. When you go into the reception, which you're all invited to later, I asked my dear friend Mark Slakoff to put a compilation together of some of our old favorites, some Count Basie, Tony Bennett, Joe Williams, Dionne Warwick, Dusty Springfield. I think he's got it all. I was going to surprise you all, but I'll just tell you. But Dionne Warwick especially, and I go to Anthony's Coal Fire Pizza, they have the best collection. It's all our generation, those of us who are in this 50-ish era. I just smile. I heard Tom Jones, it's not unusual. I was like, oh my God, I haven't heard that in like a zillion years. So listen, everybody, thank you for coming. I could keep talking. I have to save my breath because I'm going to now play a little bit of the habanero from Carmen, one variation of the suite. It's quite a gasper, and I'm dealing with recovering little tendonitis, so I'm not making excuses, but I want to do this. So I'm wearing my Aunt Merce's Spanish outfit. I said I got to wear this. So thank you all for coming, and habanero from Carmen.
Jim and Rachel's only son. feet have touched the ground since my mom passed. I live in New Jersey, I work in New York. I had been down here for a year and a half to take care of my mother from September of 10 through March of last year. And I lived with her and took care of her. And found an assisted living facility for her to live in last March, and that allowed me to go back to the Northeast. So, you know, it's just been crazy, a struggle, just got a job. And so when I heard the news about my mom, I mean, it also happened to be the same date that my wife had passed 4 years earlier, September 11th. So when I got the news, it was just like, I know part of me just said, okay, I'm at work, I can't deal with this right now. And so I'm feeling it now, and it's good. I actually wrote, usually I don't write anything, but here goes. I look back on my childhood and I realized I grew up in a house where my parents had split shifts. One of them was always there. My dad was a musician, so he'd be gone at night, and my mom was gone during the day. Mom would drop me and my younger sister off at the local school, then she'd go to work at the community college. Dad would pick us up when school was through, and he'd be home with us in the afternoon, unless he was out giving drum lessons at students' homes, mostly in the affluent community known as Emerald Hills. Mom would walk in the door at 4:15 on the dot, then take her half-hour nap. It was like, hi, goodbye, boom, bedroom door shut. Half an hour later, she would emerge, and she'd make dinner for us. She made dinner, I'd say, just about every night, except for the 1 or 2 times we went out for pizza. Oh, we did McDonald's? I blocked that out. Okay. But, you know, my dad had to go to work, so there weren't going to be long lingering dinners. You had to start getting ready. So anyway, we'd sit down to dinner, and we always ate as a family, which I guess I took for granted at the time, but there we were just about every night eating together. And she was a really good cook. No one mentioned that. My mom could cook anything, and from chicken wings to London broiled to franks and beans to very good spaghetti sauce. Since I've been in New York, I've heard horror stories from people whose mothers couldn't cook, and they would try to find excuses to get out or, you know, get a meal some other way. When we were done, my sisters and I would start cleaning up. My dad would get ready for work. He'd take a shower, shave, put on his tuxedo. He worked in a tux, so every day he was in a tux. We'd kiss him goodbye, and then he'd go off to his gig. That was a time when my mom and I would spend the most time together, watching primetime television. There's a real connection between that TV and our family and my relationship with her in particular. At the time, I had to consider that being the wife of a musician might not have been that easy, and could sometimes get lonely. And he was gone at night. So he had Monday nights off. That was a musician night, so that's not exactly the night you're going to go out and partake in revelry. He worked holidays, New Year's Eve, you know, so we'd sit there and watch TV, and we had this giant black and white television, AM, FM radio, you know, LP, hi-fi combo. It was like a wood panel Volvo sitting in the middle of the living room, this giant thing. And we'd sit there on the couch and watch variety shows. She knew all the stars, all the personalities. She'd say, that's so-and-so, that's so-and-so. This one was married to that one for 3 weeks, that one. And I learned so much about all these faces and names and celebrities, which I continued as an adult, and I have a pretty good database myself of actors and directors and whatever. So it started with her, though. I attribute that to her, and she loved it. She knew so much. She was like, how do you know all that? Anyway, and she would, as my sister pointed out, make comments. When she wasn't wearing her glasses, she'd go like this. I remember. Oh boy, you knew you were in trouble then. She would say, "Que gordo, que flaca," you know, or "He used to be so handsome. What happened?" That was another one of her favorites. Okay, pardon me, a lousy newsreader, okay. She loved watching Andy Williams, Stephen Eady, Jack Jones, singers mostly. She loved to sing and loved watching performers. And I just remember many happy hours and movies. I remember we watched To Kill a Mockingbird. We were a liberal household, and I realized now that was like the great liberal cinematic anthem, if you will. Atticus and Tom Robinson. And my dad liked the Grapes of Wrath. I remember, we were definitely maybe a little left-leaning household, but, and my dad would wake me up, just as an aside, after midnight. Like he'd get home 1 or 2 in the morning, and this is before cable, so they put like the worst movie possible on at midnight on Channel 10, and it would end at 2. So he'd check in on me, he'd say, "Jimbo, you sleep?" "Yeah, I have school tomorrow, I'm 12, yes, I'm asleep." But he'd say, "You gotta watch this movie, man, it's a bomb." And I'd get up and watch like terrible, terrible cinema, in contrast to what I watched with her. And my dad would just sit there and break up, so I have a lot of memories around the television. Okay, she also loved music. I grew up in a house where the days where you took your stack of LPs and you put them on the spindle, even though they said don't do that because they scratch, and you hear the kerplop, and then, so it was a lot of Tito Puente, Joe Cuba, Mongo Santa Maria, and I have this very vivid memory of my mother in the kitchen. She would dance in place. My father hated dancing. I was like, don't ask him. And she'd twirl around at a certain point and then flip the thing. And when the music hit a fever pitch with the horns and the percussion and just everything was going nuts, she let out with an ehele. Now I've Googled ehele. I don't know how you spell it. I don't think it's a real word. But, you know, she had fun. She, as my sister said, she reminded me of Sinatra in a way, and that she did it her way, you know. You could tell her this, and this. You could show her in, you know, in the New York Times, Mom, this is, and she didn't want to do it, or didn't believe it, she didn't do it. And so that was growing up. There's so much I could say about our childhood. We covered a lot of the bases. I left Florida. I was born here, raised here, never liked it here. So I moved to New York in 1984 to go to film school. I haven't done anything with the degree, but I've stayed in the Northeast. And seriously, I feel kind of sad because my father got sick in '99, and he passed in 2000. And, you know, I would see my family on visits. You know, hello, how are you? You know, I'd be gone in a week, and so I missed all those decades of good health for them. And, you know, but it's like my life wasn't meant to be here. And they understood that, my family understood that. So, you know, and then he passed. I managed to come down a few times while he was sick. And, you know, my mom had been dealing with her illness for a long time. And I lived with her, like I said, and it wasn't always smooth, and I'm not always proud of how I acted because it was hard. It was very difficult watching her in that condition, and she wasn't always in the, you know, gracious, grateful mood. Thank you, son, for coming down and taking care of me. It wasn't easy, but I think I made my peace with her, and you know, here was a woman who was doing aerobics classes in her 60s. She did Hawaiian dancing with Carrie. You can see the pictures here. People thought they were sisters. You watch your head go, oh, thank you. So, you know, she just was this force to be reckoned with. Remember, she said, I hurt my hand. I said, how? I was lifting weights, and I put my... It was 60s or whatever. But this, you know, lymphoma, and she couldn't drive, and I don't want to dwell on it, but her skin, basically. She was under attack from her own skin, 24/7. Most people, you have an illness, you know, you take your meds and you get a little reprieve, but she never had a reprieve. And, you know, it's like I'm able to let it in now and feel more. And, you know, I was her son, I was the only one, and Latin women love their sons, sorry, nothing like personal sisters, but it's a cultural thing, and if I was a bad boy, I would have gotten away with murder, but I wasn't. So I'm just glad to be here. It's nice to see everybody here. I know some of you, don't know others, but, you know, and she's at peace. And that's the one thing that I've been feeling more than anything. Maybe it's a defense, I don't know. But last few years have not been easy. We're not easy for her. And my sisters, thank you for all you did before my coming down and after. When I was living with her, I admittedly didn't see much of you, but, you know, James is here, take care of it. And I understand perfectly, you know. So this is for Mom, and she's up there with Dad, and they're hopefully not fighting. Because God will say, there's the door, you're not gonna, you don't gotta get along up here. And I miss her, and I love her. I love you, Mom. And I can't say anything else. Thank you.
I'm a humorist, so as a humorist aside, if my parents are arguing, my deceased husband Reggie is telling them to cut it out. Okay. The reason I got back up here is I totally spaced out mentioning my mother was a vocalist. I mean, those of you who read the obit know that. And I just wanted to say the next selection is Ave Maria, which she loved to sing. And she loved habanero. She loved all this music. So she was a good singer. You know, she had her issues with pitch. We used to get on her about it. But, you know, she essentially had the drive, and I love her for that. I think I learned a lot of the performing from her and my dad. I mean, come on. You know, how can you go wrong with that combination? So anyway, I wanted to dedicate this next one to Mom. Can you all hear me okay? Yeah. I had some friends come in at the last minute. They're not on the program. Elena Alamilla on cello. Georgetta Miller, Spiridon, yes, Miller, on violin, dear friends. Excuse us while we organize.
And I was one of the other sons. There was 4 of us, 5, depending on the time, depending on the weekend. But we were always there. Rachel was my alternate mother. I'm of a Cuban background, and if you're familiar with that culture, very strict, very Catholic, very right-wing, very, if you're not Cuban, you're not anything. At least that's the way I grew up with my parents. When I would go over to Jim's house and hang out like we always did as high school kids, Jim mentioned it. They were leftists. They were the left wing, and I would come over there like, where'd you get that? What? Nixon was a good guy? Oh no, not James Sr., not James the Great, and not Rachel. But I learned because of Rachel and James Sr., I had another side, another view that I did not have on this side. The Cuban, macho, everything. You know, I come over there and I say, "You're not the man when you do those kind of things." And then Rachel would say, "What's the matter? You're going to be a man whether you do it that way or not. Do you have," which she would say, and I'm not going to say this church, she would say this down here. She says, "If you got those, you're a man." It doesn't matter what you do and how you live your life, you're a man. Rachel, thank you. Jimmy the Great, thank you, because you made me who I am today. Many of you have seen it because a lot of us are on the internet, and if it's on the internet, it must be true. You may have seen the poem about living the dash. You know the dash. You've seen it on tombstones. You've seen it on obituaries. This person's name, January 1919, dash, such and such date of death. Well, what is that dash? That dash is the life that you are living today, the life that you led. Rachel lived that dash. She was truly a Renaissance woman. She was a daughter. She was a sister. She was a girlfriend. She was a wife. She was a mother. She was an educator. She was a dancer. She was a vocalist. She loved to help others. And then that form of cancer that Jim mentioned, lymphoma, took her away from us. But that's just the body. That spirit will live inside of us as long as we have that body on this earth. She'll still be with us. As you notice, her physical is not here, but her spirit's here. Cancer can do a lot of things to us. But there's a lot of things that cancer cannot do. Cancer is so limited. It cannot cripple love. It cannot shatter hope. It cannot corrode faith. It cannot destroy peace. It cannot kill friendship. It cannot suppress memories. It cannot silence courage. It cannot invade the soul. It cannot steal eternal life. And it cannot conquer the spirit. Rachel, you're loved. Rachel, you were our hope when we were growing up. You gave us the faith. You gave us peace, even though that there was times of torment in our home back on 3430 Pershing. You helped us with the friendship. Many memories. You gave me courage. Your soul is here. You now have eternal life because you are the Spirit within us today. Thank you.
Well, I'm short like Rachel. I'll go down. On out, and I was Rachel, or as I call her, Rochelle. I was her girlfriend. And I have some notes on her. Actually, I called her Rochelle because that was her theater name. That's what she had everybody call her. And I never knew her name was Rachel till I got in with the family. So I think she kind of wanted to keep that part of her life. That was her separate thing. That was her me time, to be on the stage, to be singing with the Gold Coast Opera, the South Florida Light Opera. And we were ingenue girls together. Yeah. She was my closest singing buddy, and we may have at first looked like an odd couple because we were at different stages of our lives, and we were 24 years apart, which I recently learned because I always thought she was still in her 70s. She kind of fudged on the truth there. And you mentioned something interesting, Carol, that I didn't know, that she got married in January of 1955. What was the day?
January 8th.
8th. I was born on the 18th. So, yeah, interesting that we should have become friends. And also, I don't know if you're aware, she went to the same high school as my mother, the Washington Irving High School in New York, yeah, which was a high school of fashion design and other things. Yeah, and that my mother and my aunt both went there. Their father was in the garment industry. So, but my mother is almost 90 now and still living. So they weren't in the same class or at the same time, but it was the same high school. So they had that in common. Rachel and I really enjoyed the same music. I love all kinds of music, but I especially love opera and classical music. And we met in the South Florida Light Opera Company. We were doing Gilbert and Sullivan together, and we immediately hit it off. And we'd be, primping and getting dressed, and we were just having such a great time. And we were sort of very much the same. We had the same kind of quirky, peculiar habits, like bursting into song at the drop of a hat, or vocalizing in the car. When nobody expects it, we just come out with weird noises. So it never bothered either of us that one would start it, and we just joined right in. We were kind of symbiotic, of one mind. And Rachel was a friend who, when one of us, when there was a lyric that I would forget, she'd prod me and remind me of what the words were. And if she got a note wrong, I'd prod her and sing it for her, that's the right note. So she had my back and I had hers. And whether we were on the stage with Bulgarian opera chorus, who were pushing us all over the place, she held her own. She didn't let anybody push her around, on stage and off. And sometimes she would, not so gently remind you that you forgot something, forgot a lyric. She was pretty blunt at times, but that was Rachel. No nonsense, gave it to you straight, honest to a fault, and that's what I loved about her. No pussyfooting around, no hemming and hawing, no holes barred, no doubts, brutally honest, sometimes hilarious remarks. She didn't even know she was being funny. She'd just say something that would crack you up. She was either for something or strongly against it. There was no middle ground and no gray area. But I could always relate because I'm very much the same. She was my soulmate in friendship. You played Habanera, and it reminded me of when we did Carbon. And we had a great time, always on stage. I miss her, but I know I'll always be able to see her there, backstage, in the wings, in the shadows, ready to go on, ready to sing joyously wherever she is.
Did anybody else want to speak? You're in charge.
Yeah, I know.
I would love for somebody to come up and be with me to sing this. We were going to sing Let There Be Peace on Earth, and we handed out some lyrics there. Now, I do want to call your attention to a few words because I got this music from Rachel. I was supposed to sing it for a show one time, and I'd never heard it before. And I called her up in a panic, and she goes, "Oh, I know that. That's a great piece. I have the music." So I ran over. She gave me the music, and I noticed that the words that were changed, I'm pretty sure she had done it, are to make this a less sexist piece, and really more open and including everyone in a happier song. So where you see the words, instead of God our Father, she changed it to our Creator, and instead of brothers all are we, it was family all are we. So we got the sisters in there too. And let us walk with each other instead of me walk with my brother in perfect harmony. Yeah. And then she changed the word solemn to joyous because it sounds better that way, isn't it? And more uplifting.
It's Rachel's way.
It had to be Rachel's way. Yeah, and as Rachel would say, this isn't my key, I'm a soprano. So.
Let
silence just to pause and grab that moment that grabs us about Rachel. It may be as you're looking at the photos on the stage, or maybe something that you recall from your time in life with her, but just hold that moment for just a second. And as you hold that moment for just a second, I want you to invite you to find one word that describes your relationship best with Rachel. Just one word. And as you hold on to that one word, I'm going to count to 3, and I want you all to speak it at once. Everyone has one word? Ready? 1, 2, 3.
Teacher.
Joy.
1, 2, 3.
Teacher.
1, 2, 3. Those words that you just spoke of your relationship with Rachel will take you from this place and always hold that memory of her with you wherever you go. At this time, I invite you to rise as you're able. And we're going to conclude this service as Carol has asked us to conclude with the Lord's Prayer. Our Creator, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever. Amen. Thank you for being with us this evening. We invite you now to the social hall next door for a time of reception and getting to spend time with James and Carol.